Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 12, our final reading from the book Whodunit, You Decide. Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. In the last episode, we talked about... it was the one about the guy that was in the hospital, and it was a family feud. Anyways, it's all rights reserved, and so we will get right on to it. The mystery we'll be reading today is One Strike, You're Out. Typically it's 3 strikes, but this should be interesting. And there's a picture here by Lucy Corvino. A very good picture. And let's get on with this. Okay. The prosecutor was doing her best to make the meek bantamweight look like a monster. Prosecution. Glenn Weaver's plan was diabolically simple. For weeks, the neighborhood of Regal Park had been plagued by burglaries, but Glenn's wife, Dora, wasn't worried. A first-rate alarm system protected their home. Then, so very conveniently, on the morning of her murder, the alarm broke down. Dora stayed home from work that day, waiting for a repairman who never showed up, a repairman that her husband had never called, and with good reason, for if the alarm had been fixed, Glenn Weaver would never have been able to bludgeon his wife to death and try to blame it on a non-existent burglar. The murder had been discovered by Jimmy and Johnny Hall at 5:30 p.m. The teenage brothers had just started batting baseballs in the park behind the Weaver home. Jimmy hit a long one, and as bad luck would have it, they heard the shattering of glass. Being honest boys, Jimmy and Johnny began walking towards the row of houses. A man in the house next door had also heard the crash. He came out onto his patio and looked around. "Looks like you boys are going to have to deal with Dora Weaver," he said, pointing to the kitchen door. In the Weaver house, there was a hole in the lower left of the door's window. The man joined the boys and was about to knock on the door when he happened to glance through the window. Good heavens! Dora Weaver was lying in the middle of the kitchen, her head surrounded by a pool of blood. Both the neighbor and the boys stared at the body, then glanced up. Glenn Weaver was standing in the dining room doorway, a bloody rolling pin clutched in his hand. He seemed dazed and shocked. On seeing the 3 faces in the window, Glenn dropped the weapon and hurried away. "Where's my ball?" Jimmy asked as he scanned the kitchen floor. His brother told him to shut up. Prosecution. The defense is going to tell you that Glenn Weaver had just arrived home from work and that he had just poured himself a scotch in the living room, that he heard the crash of glass, and that's when he walked into the kitchen. His wife's body was already there. They're going to tell you that a stunned Mr. Weaver picked up a rolling pin, not realizing that it was the murder weapon. Give me just a sec here. Okay. So it was a rolling pin? Okay, let me see. Well, our response is simple. We will show that the Weaver home had been sealed, every door and window locked from the inside. Even if Mrs. Weaver had admitted her killer, she couldn't very well have bolted the door after he left. Plus, there's no sign of forced entry. A witness, Mrs. Weaver's aunt, was in the house, and in her wheelchair by a second floor window. She will testify that no one even approached the front door until Glenn Weaver unlocked it at 5:25 p.m. The evidence is simple and straightforward. Had it not been for the baseball, Glenn Weaver would have had all the time he needed to wipe his prints off the rolling pin, force a door or window to create the charade of a brutal murder occupying during a robbery attempt. Thank heavens for baseball. It's baseball that will help us convict a cold-blooded killer. The defense waives its opening statement, and you feel sorry for little Mr. Weaver. He certainly doesn't look cold-blooded, but if he did kill his wife, if he didn't kill his wife, then who did? Okay, trial witnesses and evidence. Let's get on with this. This crime can be solved in 2 clues. Prosecution witness, Dora's aunt. Prosecution. Miss Burden, did you see Mr. Weaver come home? Yes, I was sitting by my window. Glenn came home about 5:25. Did you hear any noises from downstairs? The attack on your niece? The sound of breaking glass? No, I turned my hearing aid off. Was Mr. Weaver aware that you often turned off your hearing aid? Yes, he was the one who suggested it. I hate street noise. So, Glenn Weaver knew you would not be able to hear when he attacked his wife? Objection. Objection sustained. How did you manage to get up and down the stairs? The staircase is equipped with an electric riding chair. There's a wheelchair at the bottom I can lift myself into. It takes effort, but I can manage. So you can move between floors if you really have a need to. Yes. Prosecution witness, burglar alarm repairman. According to our records, we never received a call from Mr. Weaver about a breakdown. We were getting a lot of work lately on account of the burglaries in the area. Did you install the Weaver system? Yes, about 3 months ago. It was a silent alarm that automatically rung the police. Mrs. Weaver didn't want any obvious signs that the house was protected. We told her the more obvious the alarm, the more it would discourage burglars, but she thought that alarm strips and wires were ugly. Did you inspect the alarm system after the murder? Yes, some of the wires had jiggled loose in the connection box. A 2-minute repair job. Prosecution witness, Robert Jenkins, the neighbor. The witness describes events leading up to his discovery of the body, including Glenn Weaver's appearance and actions when he saw him in the kitchen. On cross-examination, Jenkins admits that Weaver's behavior could also be in keeping with his story that the accused was stunned and picked up the bloody rolling pin by accident. Defense. Is it true, Mr. Jenkins, that on the evening of the murder you rushed out to a building supply store and insisted that they open up for you so that you could buy a new kitchen door? Yes, I bought a reinforced steel door without a window. And why did you do that? My old door was pretty flimsy and I wanted protection, especially after what happened to Dora. So despite what you saw, you thought Mrs. Weaver had been attacked by a burglar and not by Mr. Weaver? That's what your actions seem to indicate. I guess so. Defense witness, officer on the scene. The officer. Mr. Glenn Weaver reported the crime at 5:34 p.m. He said that he had just come home. He'd heard glass breaking, but could not tell where it came from. He went back into the kitchen, and that's when he found his wife at 5:35. We received a similar call from Mr. Robert Jenkins next door. Me and my partner arrived at 5:40. Jimmy and Johnny Hall were on the front lawn. Mr. Weaver was upstairs with the victim's aunt. He came down and let us in. First thing I saw when I entered the kitchen was Dora Weaver lying on her back. There was a bloody concussion on her temple, indicating that she had been attacked from the front. The rolling pin was by the dining room door. There were signs of a struggle, torn clothing, things knocked off counters. There was also glass fragments on the floor by the back door. Oh, and the baseball beside the body, about a foot away. In your opinion, were there any signs of a burglary? No obvious signs, no. Prosecution witness, Dora Weaver's sister. Karen Langford. I loved Dora, but she was always a bit of a shrew. Poor henpecked Glenn put up with an awful lot. It's no wonder he finally snapped. How long were they married? 15 years? If things were so bad, why didn't they just get a divorce? Dora talked about divorce, but Glenn always wound up apologizing for things that were Dora's fault, and somehow they stayed together. Were there any reason that you shouldn't have Were there any reasons that he shouldn't have divorced her? Money? Children? No. So maybe the reason they stayed together was because he loved her. Maybe. Now let's go to the deliberations. Let's see, this was called, One Strike You're Out. Okay. Oh, here. As you confer, you agree that the most disturbing aspect of the case is the apparent lack of motive. Glenn Weaver seemed to have no reason, financially or otherwise, to murder his wife of 15 years. But if Glenn did not kill her, then who did, and why? The only other person in the locked house was Dora's aunt. The aunt could move between floors by herself, but remember, there was a struggle. The aunt would probably not be the winner in any fight with her niece. One juror nominates the alarm system repairman. What if he were the neighborhood burglar? He could have let himself into the house, perhaps with the key he had made on his previous visit. Who would make a better burglar than a security specialist? And it would also increase demand for his legitimate business. A nice theory, but there seems little evidence to support it. Another juror suspects that Mr. Jenkins knows more than he's telling. Why is he so desperate to replace the back door of his house? Was he afraid of something or someone? You personally wonder about the baseball. Why didn't Jimmy Hall see it when he looked around the kitchen floor? Okay, so let's see. We are going to go to the thing here. One strike, you're out. You find Glenn Weaver not guilty. Your curiosity about Jimmy Hall's baseball leads to an interesting theory. All 12 of you have a private conference with the district attorney. A search warrant produces a hoard of stolen goods and a confession from Robert Jenkins, the neighbor. Robert Jenkins. I'm the guy who's been robbing houses. As for the Weavers, I didn't mean to kill nobody. I figured Dora and Glenn were still at work. The old lady would be upstairs with her hearing aid off, and I'd have the downstairs to myself. I had no idea about the alarm. I'm glad it was off. So I break in around 5 o'clock, smash the glass in the door so I can reach in for the knob. I barely get inside when Dora barges in. Crazy woman. She sees the broken glass and my gloves, and she attacks. I grab the rolling pin to defend myself, and, well, you know. I don't take anything. I'm too scared. I walk out, then reach in through the hole and bolt the door. I go home to my own kitchen, and then a little while later, this baseball comes flying through the glass in my door. I go outside, and I see these boys coming with their bats. They're looking around for their ball. I leave my kitchen door open so they can't see the broken window, then point to the hole in the Weaver's window. The rest is all luck, Glenn being there just at the right time. I send the boys out front to wait for the cops, then slip the baseball in beside Dora. The only problem left is my broken glass. In the dark, you can barely see, but I have to replace it right away. You know how hard it is finding a building supply store open at that hour. Oh. So I guess that it was the neighbor that had been robbing everybody. Okay. That has been... So it was the neighbor. Anyways, this has been the very final reading of Whodunit, You Decide. Mini Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.